Hi, so I've been asked to make a Fanny tutorial for quite a while now, and here's what I've come up with. I'll be breaking this guide down into two halves. The first half will be a more simpler guide, filled with basic cables and small tips, while the second half will be a little more detailed and in-depth. So to get started, let's talk about Fanny's passive. There are three important things about Fanny's passive. Number one is that the faster she is flying, the more damage she will do. Number two, when Fanny hits an enemy with her second skill, they will receive a passive mark, which can stack up to 2 times. This passive mark grants you energy back whenever you hit them again with a skill. Number 3, your ult damage will be increased depending on how many marks the enemy has. Now that we're done with her passive, we can talk about cable mechanics. When Fanny cables, there is a basic set of rules. When double cabling, the destination which you land at depends on the length of your cable and the angle between the two cables. A simpler way to see this is if you were to draw a line between the two cables' ends and reflect Fanny across that line, that is where she will land. Triple cabling is the same concept as the previous, but once you cast the third cable, you essentially ignore the first cable and only consider the second and third cable. Some quick tips for using Fanny cables. Always use the minimap in the top left to help you aim your cables. If you're doing longer cables, you can also pan the map using your left pointer finger on the minimap to see where your cables will attach to. There are two general emblems that you should be using on Fanny, Assassin Emblem and Fighter Emblem. Both emblems are good, but it really comes down to your playstyle and enemy composition. Assassin Emblem is very good at snowballing early game and one-shotting squishies after completing a couple items. Assassin Emblem is weak late game and requires someone else to carry if the match reaches late game. As for Fighter Emblem, you're much more tanky due to increased defense and extra spell ban. This makes the Fighter Emblem the more go-to emblem since you have more sustain early game, which lets you invade the enemy easier. When playing Fanny, your main objective is to snowball early game and make sure that the enemy can't farm. You can achieve this by invading enemy jungle constantly or putting pressure on enemy lane. You should prioritize in helping your team in small skirmishes if you have enough energy, since you're the best roamer in the game. If you can't contest turtle, try to trade the turtle for an enemy buff or a kill on their gold laner. It is important that you're always panning your map and looking for enemies and trying to keep track of their cooldowns, so you know when you can play aggressive or not for an easy kill. In teamfights, you should prioritize squishy heroes or the enemy carries. Another quick tip is, if you want an easy kill, try to kill the enemy mid laner when they're rotating from mid lane to another lane while in their jungle. There's one combo that everyone should know, and that is the one-shot combo. When cabling towards an enemy, if the place where Fanny is supposed to land is beyond where the enemy is standing, you can ult right before hitting the enemy with your second skill, and what this does is the game thinks that you're still hitting them with your second skill right before you hit your ult, which results in a lot of damage. After Fanny lands her ult, she can do any action right before with no delay. That could be a basic attack to trigger Heptases, a first skill, or even a second skill to get away. And that concludes the first part of the guide. Now into the more detailed guide. I asked my community what you guys wanted to know about Fanny a while ago, and here's what I got out of it. I'll be going over rotation, matchup, itemization, emblems, and what to do when you don't have a buff. So for rotation, when starting the game, you will always want to start blue buff no matter what. It doesn't matter if the enemy has a Frank or a Hilda, you will always start blue. The reasoning for this is that if you were to start red and the enemy roamer spots this, the roamer might try to come over and invade you. Another reason to always start blue buff is that Fanny has the strongest level 2 in the game. After securing blue buff, you'll be level 2, and that's when you can try to play aggressive to get an early kill or to invade the enemy jungle. As Fanny, you want to try to invade the enemy as much as you can. This will either put the enemy jungle behind in farm and force them to try to invade your jungle to catch up, or 2, make them contest their jungle in a small area where Fanny will have an advantage. Invading on Fanny is so strong since it keeps the enemy jungle in their jungle, making it so your side lanes can't get ganked. You're drawing attention away from your side lanes and making the enemy mid laner and roam target you to help out their jungler. A quick tip when playing jungle in general is to ask your roamer to get vision on the enemy jungle camp, so you can keep track of where the enemy jungle is going. After level 4, you'll want to either continue invading the enemy jungle or permagank an enemy side lane. If you see an enemy even slightly overextend in their lane, your job is to punish them. With you ganking, you can either secure a kill for your team or force the enemy to use their battle spell and set up a kill for the next gank. So for mid game, after 2 items, if you are relatively fed compared to the enemy team, you can honestly just start one-shotting them back to back. You will use this item advantage to secure as many towers as you can to put more pressure onto the enemy. Another thing you should be focusing on in this part of the game is to try to get a pick onto the enemy before a team fight starts. This will put your team in a very good spot for the next team fight. Late game. Honestly, there isn't much that Fanny can do in late game since everyone will be full build, but the best you could do is probably just split push, control the lanes, and try to get a pick in a 1v1 situation. If you die early game or you get invaded and you don't have a blue, it is best to just continue jungling all your camps. Do not try to invade the enemy without a blue, it's pointless. What you want to do is full clear your jungle and wait in a bush or like at the side lane or the mid lane and ask your teammate to bait so you can get some damage off or potentially secure a kill. Matchups. The thing about Fanny is that everyone can either be a hard counter or an easy matchup for her. It comes down to how the enemy plays as a team and how you play. Fanny against CC isn't that big of a problem since she can be in the middle of her flight while this is happening, so she won't take any damage afterwards because she could just fly away. The problem arises when the enemy has a CC that can get you hit by another CC. This is when you get chain CC'd and just die. Some heroes that can do this would be Fredrin, Kaja, Franco, Chao, Ruby, Kufra. I would say those types of heroes would be the hardest matchup for Fanny. Fanny does good into the assassin jungle matchup and the tank jungle matchup, but I would say it's much easier to kill an assassin jungle since they tend to be way weaker early game. As for when to go which emblem, this really depends on the enemy comp and how you think they will play. If they have assassin jungle or 2 squishies, you should almost always go assassin emblem, so you can snowball easier. Even if the enemy has a tank jungle, assassin emblem has been working better for me. The only exception to this is when the enemy has a team fighting comp. For example, they have a comp that's built around Estus, Atlas, Martis, and Bratz. This is where the enemy would be prioritizing a team fight rather than going around for solo kills. In this case, Fighter Emblem would be way more beneficial. When using Assassin Emblem, you want to be much more aggressive than say when you had a Fighter Emblem. You will want to invade as much as possible to try to get a solo kill. Itemization. On Fanny, you can use any red tree you want. I will say though, I like using blue red tree for Fighter Emblem and purple red tree for Assassin Emblem. When you start the game, buy boots and rush a dagger for the extra attack speed. This lets you minimize your downtime in roaming by making you jungle faster. After this, you'll want to buy Fury Hammer. Fury Hammer is one of the best first component items because of its pen stat. After building Fury Hammer, you'll want to rush Tough Boots or Blade of the Heptases. If the enemy has a lot of CC, rush Tough Boots. If not, get Heptases. After this, you want to buy Malefic Roar. The rest of the items on Fanny are situational and can be changed depending on your playstyle and what you prefer. The most common 3 items in every Fanny build is Heptases, Malefic Roar, and Hunter Strike. You can get away with just these 3 damage items and tank afterward and still one-shot the enemies. If you're running Fire Emblem, sometimes it is better to actually rush Malefic Roar first, due to its pen, which lets you play more aggressive early game rather than having a Heptases. This works because you'll be able to hunt down their tank much earlier than you would if you had a Heptases. Situational items. When enemy has a Hayabusa or a Saber, you will want to buy Dreadnought armor after Heptases. This will help you play a little more aggressive and not get punished as hard by their damage. After your 3rd or 4th item, you will want to complete this into an anti-cuirass. As to whether you should buy Radiant Armor or Athena's Shield versus magic damage, I would say you would always want to buy Athena's Shield if you have an Assassin Emblem, since your job is just to go in and kill someone and get out quickly. If that is the case, Athena is all you need. If you're running Fighter Emblem where you'll be staying in fights a little longer, then Radiant will be better. If you're really ahead and the enemy has front-loaded damage, then Queen's Wings is a very good item for you. It'll help you survive their burst damage and give you a bit of spell vamp. And I believe that is all that comes to my head when it comes to me teaching someone else Fanny. If you have any other questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer to the best of my abilities. Other than that, I hope you guys liked the video and found it helpful in some ways. Thank you guys for watching till the end, and I'll see you guys another time.